In the year 1913, the United States stood on the precipice of monumental change, a year that would etch its name in the annals of history with a series of seismic shifts that reshaped the nation's financial, social, and political landscape. Picture a bustling America, where horse-drawn carriages still clattered alongside the first Model T Fords, and the air buzzed with the promise of progress, reform, and, some would whisper, conspiracy. It was a time when titans of industry, fiery reformers, and shadowy power brokers collided in a whirlwind of ambition, idealism, and intrigue. From the creation of the Federal Reserve to the birth of the IRS, the founding of the Rockefeller Foundation, the American Cancer Society, and the Anti-Defamation League, 1913, was a year of audacious moves that would ripple through the century. Buckle up for a wild ride through a year that changed everything, told with all the drama and flair of a blockbuster saga. The curtain rises on December 23, 1913, when President Woodrow Wilson, a bespectacled scholar-turned-statesman, put pen to paper and signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. This wasn't just any legislation. It was a game-changer, birthing the Federal Reserve System, America's first true central bank. For years, the nation had been plagued by financial panics, like the catastrophic panic of 1907, when banks crumbled, fortunes vanished, and ordinary folks lost everything. The solution? A system of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, tasked with stabilizing the economy, controlling the money supply, and acting as a lender of last resort. Sounds noble, right? But hold on to your hat. The origins of this system were steeped in secrecy and high-stakes maneuvering. Flashback to 1910, on a foggy night off the coast of Georgia, where a clandestine meeting unfolded on Jekyll Island, a playground for the ultra-rich. Here, in a secluded clubhouse, a group of banking titans, led by Senator Nelson Aldrich and Paul Warburg, a German-born financier with a razor-sharp mind, hammered out the blueprint for what would become the Federal Reserve. Warburg, a partner at Kuhn, Loeb & Co., was the mastermind, dreaming of a European-style central bank to bring order to America's chaotic financial system. The men traveled under aliases, their train cars shrouded in mystery, as if they were characters in a spy novel. Why the secrecy? Because they knew the public would cry foul at bankers crafting a system to control the nation's money. The Aldrich plan they devised was reworked into the Federal Reserve Act, a compromise that blended private banking influence with government oversight. But here's where the plot thickens. Some say this wasn't just reform, it was a power grab. Warburg, with his ties to Europe's elite banking families, sparked whispers of foreign influence. His family's firm, M.M. Warburg & Kozern, was a powerhouse in Hamburg, and rumors swirled that the Rothschilds, the legendary banking dynasty, had their fingers in the pie. While no hard evidence ties the Rothschilds directly to the Federal Reserve's creation, the mere mention of their name fueled tales of a shadowy cabal pulling strings behind the scenes. For the average American, the Federal Reserve promised stability, but to skeptics, it was a Trojan horse, handing the nation's wealth to a handful of bankers. Love it or hate it, the Fed was born in 1913, and it would grow into a financial juggernaut, shaping the economy for generations. Meanwhile, another bombshell dropped in 1913, the federal income tax. On February 3rd, the 16th Amendment was ratified, granting Congress the power to tax incomes without apportioning them among the states. This was a seismic shift, overturning an 1895 Supreme Court ruling that had struck down earlier income tax attempts. By October, the Revenue Act of 1913 was law, slapping a 1% tax on incomes over $3,000, with surtaxes climbing to 6% for the ultra-wealthy. For most Americans, this was a tax on the rich. Only about 1% of the population paid it initially. But don't be fooled. This was the seed of a system that would soon touch every paycheck in the land. The Bureau of Internal Revenue, the precursor to the IRS, was tasked with collecting this new tax. Born during the Civil War to fund Union armies, the Bureau was now reborn as a permanent fixture, its agents poised to scrutinize ledgers and demand a cut of the American dream. For progressives, this was a triumph, a way to fund government programs and reduce reliance on tariffs that hit the poor hardest. But for critics, it was government overreach, a beast that would grow hungrier with time. Imagine the shock of a New York industrialist, sipping whiskey in his mahogany-paneled study, realizing Uncle Sam now had a claim on his fortune. The income tax was here to stay, and 1913 marked the moment America's wallets became a federal affair. Across town, another titan was making waves. John D. Rockefeller Sr., the oil baron whose Standard Oil empire had made him one of the richest men alive, launched the Rockefeller Foundation on May 14, 1913. With a staggering $100 million endowment, billions in today's dollars, this was no small gesture. The foundation's mission was lofty, to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world through public health, education, and scientific research. Its early work was nothing short of heroic, eradicating hookworm in the rural South, funding medical schools, and battling disease worldwide. But let's not kid ourselves. Rockefeller wasn't just a kindly old man giving away his fortune. His wealth came from cutthroat monopolies, and the foundation was partly a way to polish his tarnished image after years of antitrust battles. Some saw it as a masterstroke of control, using philanthropy to shape science, medicine, and even global policy. The foundation's reach was vast, funding everything from malaria research to agricultural programs, but it also raised eyebrows. Was this altruism, or a way for Rockefeller to extend his influence beyond oil into the very fabric of society? In 1913, the foundation's birth was a dazzling display of wealth and ambition, setting the stage for a century of impact and suspicion. As Rockefeller's millions flowed, a quieter but equally bold movement was taking shape. On May 22, 1913, a group of 15 doctors and businessmen gathered in New York City to form the American Society for the Control of Cancer, the precursor to the American Cancer Society. Cancer was a terrifying specter, shrouded in stigma and ignorance. Patients often hid their diagnoses, and doctors lacked the tools to fight it. This new organization aimed to change that, launching a crusade to educate the public, fund research, and destigmatize the disease. A smoky room filled with determined physicians, their starched collars tight as they debated how to rally a nation against a killer most dared not name. Their early efforts were modest, pamphlets, lectures, and pleas for funding, but their vision was grand. They wanted to save lives, and they weren't afraid to challenge taboos. The Society's founding in 1913 was a spark that would grow into a blazing movement, transforming cancer from a death sentence to a battle millions would fight and win. It was a moment of hope in a year of upheaval, proof that even in turbulent times humanity could rally for a cause. Meanwhile, a darker undercurrent was stirring. In 1913, America was grappling with prejudice, and no case highlighted this more than the trial of Leo Frank, a Jewish factory superintendent in Atlanta accused of murdering a young girl. The trial was a circus, fueled by anti-Semitic vitriol, and Frank's conviction, based on flimsy evidence, ignited outrage. Enter the Anti-Defamation League, founded in September 1913 by the B'nai B'rith in Chicago. Its mission, led by lawyer Sigmund Livingston, was clear: to combat anti-Semitism and secure justice for all. The ADL's birth was a defiant stand against hate, born in the shadow of Frank's trial and his eventual lynching in 1915. It was a time when Jewish Americans faced rampant discrimination, from social exclusion to violent stereotypes. The ADL fought back with education, advocacy, and legal battles, aiming to dismantle prejudice brick by brick. In 1913, it was a small but fierce organization, a beacon for those fighting bigotry in a nation still wrestling with its ideals of equality. Its founding was a reminder that even in a year of grand institutions, the fight for justice was personal and urgent. Now let's dive into the juiciest part of 1913, the whispers of conspiracy that tie it all together. Paul Warburg, the Federal Reserve's mastermind, was no ordinary banker. His family's firm, M.M. Warburg & Co., was a titan in European finance, and their name often danced alongside the Rothschilds, the banking dynasty that loomed large in the public imagination. Were the Rothschilds secretly orchestrating the Federal Reserve's creation? Did they pull strings to install Warburg as their puppet? The truth is less cinematic but no less fascinating. The Warburgs and Rothschilds were part of Europe's interconnected banking elite, linked through business dealings and occasional intermarriages in the 19th century. But no evidence suggests the Rothschilds directly influenced the Federal Reserve's founding. Warburg's vision was rooted in his expertise in German banking, not a Rothschild playbook. Still, the secrecy of Jekyll Island and the immense power of the new Fed fueled speculation. To critics, 1913 was the year a handful of bankers, Warburg chief among them, seized control of America's economy, with the Rothschilds as the shadowy puppet masters. To historians, it was a pragmatic response to real crises, driven by domestic needs, not foreign plots. The truth likely lies in the messy middle, but the legend of 1913 as a year of conspiracy endures. Step back and take it all in. 1913 was a whirlwind. The Federal Reserve gave bankers a throne, the income tax gave the government a wallet, the Rockefeller Foundation gave wealth a purpose, the American Cancer Society gave hope a mission, and the ADL gave justice a voice. Add to that the ratification of the 17th Amendment, which let voters directly elect senators, and you've got a year that redefined America's future. It was the progressive era at its peak, with Wilson's New Freedom agenda pushing for fairness, accountability, and reform. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The Fed's creation sparked fears of elite control. The income tax raised cries of socialism, and the rise of powerful foundations like Rockefeller's hinted at unchecked influence. The ADL's founding underscored the ugly reality of prejudice, even in a nation preaching liberty. And the whispers of Warburg's ties to the Rothschilds? They fed a narrative of secret cabals that still captivates conspiracy theorists today. Imagine walking the streets of 1913 New York. Newsboys shouting headlines about Wilson's reforms, tycoons plotting in gilded boardrooms, and reformers rallying for change. It was a year of bold moves and bigger dreams, of heroes and villains depending on who you asked. The Federal Reserve stabilized banks but sparked distrust. The income tax funded progress but felt like a leash. The Rockefeller Foundation saved lives but raised questions of motive. The American Cancer Society and ADL fought for humanity but faced uphill battles. And through it all, figures like Warburg stood at the crossroads of reform and suspicion, their legacies as debated then as they are now. As the sun set on 1913, America was a different place. The institutions born that year, the Fed, the IRS, the Rockefeller Foundation, the American Cancer Society, the ADL, would shape the 20th century and beyond. They were products of their time, born of crises and ideals, yet they carried the weight of controversy. Were they tools of progress or instruments of control? The answer depends on who's telling the story. For some, 1913 was the year America took charge of its destiny, taming wild markets, funding a stronger government, and championing health and justice. For others, it was the year power consolidated, with bankers, bureaucrats, and billionaires carving up the nation's future behind closed doors. The truth, as always, is messier than the myths. But one thing's certain: 1913 was a blockbuster, a year of epic clashes and audacious visions that left an indelible mark on the American story. And somewhere, in the shadows of history, the ghosts of Jekyll Island still whisper, daring us to decide what it all meant.